video.
This is a quarter horse mare that I'm trimming in this video, and she is on a very consistent hoof care schedule. I think I trim her usually about every 4 weeks, and the footage in this video is from this past fall, and we were having a bit of a drought period, so all the hooves during that time were pretty dry. And also, like, during that time when it is so dry, the hoof wall has a lot more integrity to it. It's a lot stronger, a lot thicker. There's a lot less hoof wall separation. So this is going to be kind of a textbook maintenance trim. I used my nippers first, and now I'm using my rasp just to kind of smooth everything out. And when you trim on a 4-week schedule, you have to be careful not to take too much hoof wall. It's really easy to over trim when you're trimming that frequently. So we're kind of just removing any excess growth and kind of trying to bring that hoof back into balance, but being mindful to not remove too much material. Now I'm working on that hoof from the top side, and I'm mostly just going to smooth out that bevel. We actually had a pair of Octos, Easycare Octos on this horse a couple months ago, and you can see the line where she was still in the shoes, where there's still super glue, and about halfway up the hoof wall, that's the new growth after being in shoes. So finishing up my bevel and smoothing everything out before I move on to the next hoof. Now I'm working on this horse's hind hoof, and she has really healthy hind hooves. She does get ridden quite a bit. She competes in barrel racing and is quite successful at that, even though she's had a few injuries over the years. She's a pretty awesome high-performance barrel horse that does indeed most of the time run barefoot. So I'm removing any excess material with my nippers, mostly through the quarters and in the toe area, because these hind hooves are pretty dang balanced. She doesn't have a lot of excess heel growth, so I don't think I'm going to take that with this tool. I think I'll address that with my rasp. Now I'm just going to smooth out all those areas and start the beginning stages of my bevel, making sure everything is smooth and balanced, while once again being mindful to not remove too much material, because that could be harmful. Even though you can tell this hoof at the apex of the frog, which is the tip of the frog, there's a lot of depth there, which tells me that the hinds have a lot of sole depth. So because of that, I can be a little bit more aggressive on her toe if I wanted to, although I really don't with her. Right now I'm just removing any excess sole that's trying to shed and kind of smoothing out those bars if they're laying over a tiny bit. But they're pretty straight. These hind hoofs on this horse are very strong. So yeah, just kind of cleaning them up and maintaining them on this shorter schedule, which really helps this horse have much healthier hooves. If she went 6 or 8 weeks, we would see a lot more distortion and probably some pathology. So I'm really glad she is on a short schedule, because it's definitely what she needs. Now I'm working on that hind from the top, and this is kind of a nice perspective. You can see that the hoof walls on this hoof are pretty dang straight. There's not much deviation from the hairline down to where the ground surface would be. So very healthy hooves, very limited flaring or dishing. You can see a few event lines in the hoof wall, but event lines that small are usually from just changes in the grass or worming the horse or getting vaccinations or things like that. They are not big inflammatory events. Now I'm working on the other hind hoof, and you can see that the wear pattern on this hind is very similar to the other hind hoof, which is really great to see, because it means this horse is using both its hind legs evenly. And for a horse that's had some injuries, that's something that I look for in case she's getting sore or having some physical issue somewhere. But by the wear pattern on these hinds on this day, they look very good. So just like the other hind, I was removing any excess material with my nippers first. Now I'm going to use my rasp. When I'm using my rasp with both hands, I'm usually working on leveling something on the hoof, okay, or taking down a high spot on the hoof. When I use my rasp with one hand, I'm generally working on my bevel a little bit more. And that's just something I do. Doesn't mean that everybody that's trimming does it that way. Alright, so now I'm using my straight blade knife just to remove any excess sole. I mean, a lot of the sole would probably exfoliate on its own, but if I see big chunks that need to be removed, I will remove them. But they're all a chalky-like material. None of that is smooth, slick material. So right there, I just wanted to open up the frog a little bit in areas where it might trap debris and dirt. Now I'm working on this hoof from the top, really very similar to the other hind hoof, and just kind of finishing up my bevel. Just like the other hind, there's not a lot of dishing and flaring on this hoof. There's not a lot of vent lines, just very healthy hoof wall. So just finishing up my maintenance trim on this specific hoof, making sure I have a nice smooth bevel with no sharp edges so that she kind of rolls that foot on the ground and will be less likely to have chips or cracks the next time I work on her. But it's really nice to see hooves that are kept on a short trimming schedule, because you can maintain them in this fashion and really get ahead of any distortion or pathology, which is really great for the horse. Now I'm working on the right front hoof of this horse and want to pick out any dirt or debris that's in there so it doesn't get caught up in my tools and dull them. And I usually start with the part of the hoof right that's bothering me the most or that has the most growth. So I generally start with the wall because it will also dictate the height of the other structures that I trim. So taking off that excess wall growth, for whatever reason, she seems to, I don't know why she would grow more on one hoof than the other, but this one always seems like there's a bit more material to remove. Don't know why. Like I said, the wear patterns are the same. Everything is the same on this horse. She's very symmetrical. So yeah, took that excess growth with my nippers. Now I'm rasping to smooth everything and really working on the bevel on this horse's toe. I really like to make sure I bring her heels back as far as I possibly can and get a good bevel and a good roll on that toe, because in the past she has tended to have underrun heels and a long toe. She was in steel shoes for a little while that we removed, I don't know, at least a year ago, and we're still sort of fighting some of the effects from that. Not that shoeing with steel is bad at all. A lot of horses thrive in steel shoes and need them, but for this particular horse, she wasn't doing well in the setup she was in, so we've kind of been trying to manage that and get the structures back in balance, and we're getting there. It's just a slow process. So now I've got that front foot forward on the stand, and I'm just finishing up my bevel, smoothing everything out, making sure everything's as balanced as I can get it during this trim. That crack in the front of her toe is just a surface crack, and it doesn't cause any issues whatsoever. It's incredibly shallow. And that about does it for this trim. Here's a picture of this horse competing with its owner on barrels. These two are a pretty fabulous team, and I'm super proud of them.